Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session on Unacademy CAT-alyst. I am Parikshit, your quants and LRDI expert on the Unacademy platform. Today's session is going to be about how do you approach caselets. Do you actually start solving or looking at the questions right away? A very important method that you need to understand if you were to do well in your CAT upcoming examination. So first thing, as I always say, give me 10 seconds to make sure that I'm streaming live before we get started. Okay, I think we are streaming live and we are good to start. So let's get started with today's session. Okay, first things first. Approaching a caselet and attempting a question is something which is there in probably every aspirant's mind, right? When I see a long caselet, when I see a caselet with 3 or 4 questions underneath it, how do I approach it? What should be the first 30-40 seconds? That is something which I will talk about in the next 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to share a lot of practical tricks and tips which you can apply in your examination very easily. And if you were to do this, trust me, there will definitely be an increase in your number of attempts and hence your marks. So do watch the video. So first thing, how many caselets do we expect in CAT 2020? How many caselets? And I'm going to focus mostly on the LRDI section, right? Because that's where we talk about a lot of caselets. Okay, so in the LRDI section, right, how many caselets are we talking about? Now, for this, let's go to what the CAT website says. Now, if you look at the CAT website, yesterday on the 5th of November, right, the CAT released a set of guidelines, a mock test paper link. Now, if you go to the CAT-IM website, you will see this and you scroll down, what you see is this page, okay? Now on this page, if you come down, you will see this CAT 2020 mock test link for PW candidates and another one is CAT 2020 the mock test link, right? So you need to focus here. This is where the mock test paper the IIMs have uploaded. Now if you click on this CAT 2020 mock test link, okay, it will open up this specific page. It will open up this specific page. Now, what did IIM Enrol do this year? Read this. This is, I have just taken a screenshot from the IIM website. This was updated just less than 24 hours before. The mock test that you see that you will be seeing here on the IIM website this year is actually questions from previous year CAT papers. Okay? And they say that it is only to familiarize the candidates with different types of questions, both MCQs as well as non-MCQs. Now they specifically went on to mention, what did they mention? That the given mock test has been designed with a total duration of 120 minutes and 40 minutes extra for other category students. But the objective of this mock test, very important, is not to disclose the exam pattern for the CAT, and the actual exam may or may not contain similar number of type or number of questions. So previously the mock exam used to have 34 questions for verbal, 32 questions for DILR and 34 questions for quants, and hence we also used to assume that there will be 34 questions safely. But this year they have specifically mentioned, if you see, the number and the type of questions is something they do not want to disclose. Now, if they do not want to disclose, obviously in the LRDI section of your paper, right, how many caselets are we expecting? It is very difficult to answer. It might be we have 32 questions. It might be we still have 32 questions. Or it might be we have somewhere around 22 to 24 questions. 22 to 24 questions. Now in the first category, if it is case 1, we would have basically 8 caselets, right? And if it is case 2, we will basically have 5 to 6 caselets. Now if you get 5 to 6 caselets, the first thing is Which caselets do I pick up first, and do I start straight away start looking at the questions, is a $1 million question in almost every CAT aspirant's mind. Now, when I talk about LRDI section, I would like to break it up into two parts. Like most of you do LR and DI. It is LR and DI. Now think about it. Where should you actually look the options first? Or for that matter, the questions first. DI and LR. Let's talk about DI first. In DI, it is basically data interpretation. Straight away, first look at the caselet. Do not look at the questions. First, look at the caselet and just have a glance, 20-second glance, and determine from which area has it come. If I were to give you an example, let's say there is a table and it is a data intensive caselet. Data intensive. Okay. Probably a 6x6 matrix is there. There are 36 numbers on your screen and it is a data intensive caselet. Now, for such a caselet, even before solving, definitely look all the questions first. Now, why do I say that you need to look at the questions first? It's very simple. If it is a data intensive caselet, you need to do a lot of calculations. Now, depending on your answer options, okay, you will decide how much calculation is required. If the answer options are somewhere like, let's say, 23%, 23.5%, 24%, and probably none of these, there is not much scope to do what? Approximation. You cannot do too many approximation, and probably you have to do a lot of calculations. But think the other way around. Think about the other way around. If the answer options is not 23, but you know what? The answer option is rather 23%, 13%, and let's say 33%. And probably one more, none of these. Now think about it. Here your scope for approximation is very, very high. Because the scope for approximation is very, very high, you should definitely pick up such a caselet in your first attempt itself, in your first round itself. When I say first round, I mean the first few minutes of your examination. So here, if it is a DI caselet, if it is a data intensive caselet, definitely look at your answer options, because that determines whether you are gonna do this caselet at the very beginning. If the answer options are close, you know you have to do a lot of calculations. It might take time, and accordingly you might wish to skip and come back to this caselet if time permits at a later stage. I hope you get the point. Okay. Now, for other categories of DI questions, there would be obviously a lot of other categories, right? A lot of other categories of DI questions. Before, do not look at the questions first. First, I must tell you what kind of questions are we talking about. Let's say I'm talking about, let's say, a pie chart. And let's say there are 3 pie charts given to you. Okay. It is very important that before your mind or your brain starts thinking about the questions, you first understand the 3 pie charts that are given to you. And once you understand, definitely you need to relate the 3 pie charts. You need to understand what is the relation of the 3 pie charts with each other. Because obviously they cannot be in isolation. If it's a one set, they cannot be in isolation. There has to be some sort of relationship. Spend probably 120 seconds. When I say 120 seconds, I mean 2 minutes understanding the data here. It could be a pie chart, it could be a bar diagram, it could be any sort of graph. Spend 2 minutes or 90 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever is required to understand the data. That is very, very, very important. Do not look at the questions, because if you look at the questions, at least 20% of your brain is focused on thinking about the questions rather than thinking about understanding and trying to relate the data. So are you getting the point? So depending on the kind of questions, you decide whether you actually read the caselet or you actually look at the questions. After 120 seconds are probably over, 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes, At this point, you understood the caselet. Now definitely have a glance at all the questions. Now definitely have a glance at all the questions and start approaching and start solving, right? Very, very, very important. Trust me, you follow these simple rules, you will see you are able to solve at least one caselet more. And remember, the difference between a 99 percentiler and a 90 or 85 percentiler is probably just going to be one set in the LRDI. Why? One set. Someone did 4 questions more and he ended up with a 99 percentile. You did one caselet less, you probably end up with an 87, 88 percentile. So very important that such things are taken care of. So we talked about the DI section. We talked about the DI section. Next is LR. Next is LR section. Next is the LR part. Okay. Now think about the LR part. Think about the LR part, the logical reasoning section. Now in logical reasoning, obviously every time you have a glance at, you don't read the entire caselets because many a times the caselets is probably half a page. Do not read the entire caselet. Have a glance, determine from which topic has it come. Probably it's from a topic like linear arrangement, or probably it's a topic like distribution. Okay, now come back and look at the questions. Now and then probably after another 30, 40, 50 seconds, come back and look at the questions. Now, why do you look at the questions is another very important thing in a LR caselet. I actually look for 2 things in the questions. Okay, I need to look for 2 things in the questions in a LR caselet. Okay, 2 things. Now, what are the two things that I need to look in a caselet, that I need to look in the questions? First thing that you look in a LR question, okay, LR item said is if there is additional data in the questions. Something like, let's say I tell you, if P is not from Mumbai, if P is not from Mumbai, something like this, and then something, there is a question and then they will ask you a question. Second question is, if R is younger than P, if R is younger than P, something like this. Now what happens? It means the set that you will solve, right? The set that you will solve, you will not be able to solve completely. Because why? Because you see the answer questions, the questions that you have is giving you additional data, Now you know what? Such questions are actually a bit difficult to answer. Such caselets are actually a bit difficult. I won't say difficult, rather I would say a bit more time consuming. Why? Because think about it, in a LR puzzle, if you are able to solve the puzzle, ideally what should happen? You should get all the 4 questions correct. 1, 2, 3, 4 questions correct. But you know what? In this particular caselet, or probably in a specific caselet that you are looking at, you see there are extra information in every question. So what should you decide? You'd immediately say, okay, probably this caselet is going to take some time. Let me see if there is an easier caselet than this. And let's look for another set. I'm not saying you leave out this set, but probably at the start, do not start solving such a caselet immediately. Okay. You look for another caselet, you might get it, which is probably easier than this, takes less time, solve that first. Or it is possible that you might not get it and you think that you'll be able to solve this caselet. No problem, come back and solve this caselet. Do you get the point? So it is very important that whenever a LR puzzle is given, you have a glance at the puzzle, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, understand from which topic has it come, and the next 10, 15 seconds, look at the questions and see if there is additional data in the questions. If there is no additional data in the questions, you know what? You have a very good thing. What is the good part about it? The good part is, if you are able to solve the caselet, there is no additional data. All the 4 questions underneath the caselet, you will get it correct. So definitely keep making sure that you are looking at the options and the questions. That's point number 1. Point number 2, okay? In your questions, in the questions that you have in LRDI, okay, especially in logical reasoning, look for the answer option cannot be determined or none of these. You might think these are just 2 different options, but for me, they actually decide whether I solve the caselet or I do not solve the caselet. Now, what is the reason? First, let's come to none of these. Let's come to none of these. Okay. You know what? There is a bar diagram. Let me justify. Let me give you an example. There is a bar diagram. Okay. So how many years of diagram are given? Let's say there are data for 7 years. Let's say there are data for 7 years. Okay. And question is, I'm saying 7 years of data is given. And the question is, in which year the percentage growth was the highest? Percentage growth was the highest. Let's take an example. Now think about it. Because there is a none of these in the answer option, what would mean? It would mean you have to check for all the 7 options. You have to check for all the 7 options. 7 years. I mean, you have to check for all the 7 years. Will you agree? You cannot say 2012 is highest. Probably if it is very much visible with your eyes, that's a different issue. But if you have to do the calculations, you have to do it for all the 7 years. Now, do you solve such a caselet? You know what? This is gonna take time. Especially if last 3-4 minutes are remaining, you will never solve such a question. Or probably if all of the questions have a none of these and there's a data intensive, a lot of calculations are involved, all questions have a none of these, you know what? Your calculation will take a lot of time. Probably you might wish to make a decision here. Should I attempt this caselet or probably come back at a later time and solve this? If there is no none of these, good part is whatever the answer options there, if there are 4 answer options, you only need to check those 4 answer options. Now, none of these would only make sense in a DI caselet. DI caselet. Why? LR, it doesn't matter. Who is sitting next to B? Who is sitting next to B? Anywhere, if you solve the puzzle, whether you get a none of these or you don't get a none of these, absolutely no matter. It doesn't matter. But in a DI caselet, if there is calculation involved and if there is a none of these, definitely you know it's going to take time. It is going to take time. That's point 1. Now, none of these was specific to DI. If none of these exist in a DI set, life is going to be difficult. It is going to take time. Think about it, whether you would solve this question. Now come back to LR. Now come back to, let's say, LR. You know what? Cannot be determined answer option is there in a LR caselet. Is there in a LR caselet. Okay. Now, why should you be worried about it? Why should you be worried about it? You know what? Even if you have solved the caselet, okay, and moment, let's say all the answer options or probably out of the 4, 3 questions have a cannot be determined. What do you need to do? You need to go back to your solution and check if there is another possibility. If there is another possibility in your caselet which you have left out. So basically what I am trying to say is multiple solutions. Multiple solutions might exist. So if you have drawn probably a circular arrangement, go back and check. Is there another solution possible? Did I miss out one more possibility? Now what does it mean? It means your time to solve the question will increase, right? And because of which you will again decide, okay, should I solve this or shouldn't I solve this? If there is a cannot be determined in 3 out of the 4 questions, you know what? You are actually going to think about it, whether am I going to attempt this caselet first of all. On the contrary, let's say question number 4 has a cannot be determined. You know what? A LR caselet, question number 4 has a cannot be determined. Okay, there are 4 questions. The last question has a cannot be determined. Now, obviously, what will happen? You need to go back and check, is there another solution possible? Now, at this point, think about it. You might take 3 minutes to check if there is another solution possible, if there is another arrangement possible. And on the contrary, you can spend this 3 minutes in another set. Yes, do I make sense? Now, those same 3 minutes, if you spend in another sets, probably there is a very high chance that you will be able to get 3 or 4 questions. I'm not saying 3 minutes, but another 4-5 minutes. If you solve in another set, you'll be able to get all the 4 questions correct. So at this point, your CAT, have a control probably on your mind, on your ego. I know that given time, I will be able to solve question number 4 because I have solved 1, 2 and 3. But is it worth the effort? Probably I should spend this 3 minutes or 4 minutes judiciously and spend it on the next set. Why? Because if I'm able to solve the next set, you know what? I get all the 4 questions correct. I get all the 4 questions correct. So that is very, very, very important. These are very small things, but they determine how many questions can you attempt more. Even if you are able, because of the tricks, because of what I told you, even if you are able to attempt probably 2 questions or 3 questions more in your exam, you know what? We are talking about 9 marks more. 9 marks is equivalent to almost around 10 percentile. 90 percentile can become 99 percentile. So think about these small techniques, the small things that I told you today, and then decide whether I read the caselet or I start attempting the questions directly. But definitely, I do not say directly attempt the questions. But what I say is definitely read the questions, glance at the questions, and accordingly decide whether you will solve the caselet or you will not solve the caselet. Trust me, it is going to make wonders if you're going to follow this. If you're going to follow this. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and if you have any questions, you can post it in your comments. I will try to answer them. If you have liked my video, definitely do hit the like button. That will encourage me to come up with more and more such videos, right? So that's it for today. Keep in mind the things that I told you, and definitely try them in your mock. Definitely try them in your mock. You see, they will help you to improve your score, and then attempt it on the DD. Do not attempt it directly on the CAT because you will not be comfortable. So in the next 20 odd days, you will probably write 3-4 more mocks. Attempt these, whatever techniques I told you today. Definitely try it out in your mocks before you actually attempt it on the actual day. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you like the video. If yes, do hit the like button, and I will see you tomorrow for another session of mine. Tomorrow morning 10:30 a.m. Every day 10:30 a.m. I come up with a session. So tomorrow morning 10:30 a.m. I'll see you in another session. Till then, stay safe and goodbye.